Hello there, and welcome to the I Never Knew podcast, also known as Inc. This show dives into the life experiences of people who have been through it all and have come through the other side stronger, better, and triumphant. Each story is raw, authentic, and, at times, heartbreaking. One thing joins it all together: the fact that the stories can help the listener learn and grow. Hosted by life coach Maureen, she sits down each episode with a new guest who will empower the listener to set out on their self-discovery journey and start to heal. Now you'll be joined by Maureen and her special guest. Please enjoy the show.
Everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of I Never Knew But My Dog Did podcast. So happy everyone is here. I am Maureen Scanlon, or Life Coach Maureen, as you all know me. I'm so excited to be here. First of all, this is my first episode with my new painted wall. So all the other episodes, if you're watching on YouTube, and I managed to get all of the episodes up on YouTube, which is a big feat for a master. Anyway, anywho, I have this beautiful sage color, and I don't know if it's coming across. So you'll see, wow, all of a sudden Maureen's in a different office. No, it's the same office, and I love paint. So I love color. I'm not all about white. So there's that. Wins for the week. I hope everyone has had wins. We are on what is today? Tuesday. Today's Tuesday, as I like to say. And if there's anything more appropriate for today, it's that I choose to have a fabulous episode with my next guest, and I just love this so much. I saw her, said, "You have to be on." She said, "I'd love to." She's scheduled, and literally it was all within the last 48 hours. And I love that. We do not let any grass grow under our feet. So without any further ado, I'm going to read to you how fantastic she is, her story, how impactful this is. And we're going to just jump right into how amazing my next guest is. My guest, Amanda Blackwood. She finally managed to get away from the man who was trafficking her. She was 31 years old and didn't know what she'd gone through, even had a name, much less how to deal with the pain of feeling like a broken person, unworthy of love, and filled with so much anger. On a freezing cold day in 2018, she saw former trafficked people standing strong and showing their beautiful resiliency on a stage at an anti-trafficking event. At that moment, she finally knew what her purpose in life would be. Since then, Amanda has spoken on a multitude of stages, been interviewed by the Chicago Tribune, sold her art all over the country, been a keynote speaker at international summits, loaned her voice to multiple radio programs, and published over a dozen books. Oh, she's fantastic. I called her a boss babe off air, and I mean it more than ever. She launched 2 podcasts, one that focuses on interviewing other authors of trauma, and the other that discusses the long-term consequences of trauma and how to fight back for a better life. She's a trauma recovery mentor, professional artist, accomplished public speaker, and a charity campaign manager for MMA legend Frank Shamrock through shamrockway.org. And we're going to find out all about that. She lives in Denver, Colorado, with her rescue kitties and her husband and her son. Or no, her son doesn't live with her, but she has a fabulous son. Without further ado, oh my gosh. Welcome, my beautiful Amanda.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here with you today, Maureen.
Oh, I And I'm going to say this again, and listeners, you know me by now. We're at episode, I think, 86 now. And you know that I'm going to be repetitive because it's what I do. And I think repetition helps us learn. But I do tend to be more repetitive than necessary, I'm sure. But I'm going to say this, and I don't mind repeating this. When you see Amanda and her light and that beautiful fiery red hair, and you learn of her story, it still never ceases to amaze me how much the human soul can go through and come out on the other side still willing to be better and help others. And so she's just a shining example of this. Amanda, we here at I Never Knew talk about our story, and then we go further from there to where you are now. And I call it your knee story. And that's the moment when you really were on your knees. Now, I know what you've been through. You probably had many, many knee stories, but tell me wherever you want to start. How did this happen? When did it happen? How old were you? Tell us your full story. We can't wait to hear about it.
Well, you just hit on the number one question that I get regularly is, how old were you? Every single time somebody finds out that I'm a survivor of human trafficking, that is always the first question. And I like to preface this by saying that one of the unusual statistics a lot of people aren't aware of when it comes to human trafficking is that only 1/4 of all victims are under the age of 18. So I was beyond the age of 18 the first time I was trafficked. And I say the first time because I was actually trafficked 3 different times. You want to talk about knee benders.
Oh my gosh.
I was molested the first time at 4, again at 12, again at 13, again at 15, raped at 17, trafficked at 18 and 19, and trafficked the last time at 31 years old. So having grown up in this abusive environment and being treated as a sex object my entire childhood, basically, not only did it rob me of the ability to be a child, so it actually caused me to regress and to have behavioral issues, it also taught me that the people who are closest to me, the people that I trust the most, are expected to hurt me.
Yeah.
So there was this psychology that was going on where if somebody didn't hurt me, that meant they didn't love me. They couldn't exist without one another. So I kept on chasing these awful relationships constantly, moving from one place to the next, ending up in really horrible situations, homeless a couple of times, doing everything I could just to try and make my way in the world and thinking, there's got to be something better than this. And always having kind of that innocent perspective about it, even though my life was anything but innocent. There was still a lot of innocence in me. They tried to steal that away from me. They didn't do it. I was still overly trusting, mainly because of, again, that psychology to where if they hurt me, that means they love me. I was willing to trust anybody and to seek out relationships and friendships and romantic relationships wherever I could. There was one particular low moment in the middle of my trafficking in Scotland. I had known that man for 7 years. He was a police officer, and he asked me to get a fiance visa to move over there to be with him. I was going to go off to the land of castles and get married to this man and have this happily ever after with a police officer who knew my life history and knew that I had been so abused. And I knew I was going to be safe with him. And after 7 years, he finally got me there, and it took him 7 days to start trafficking me. There was one particular day where I was able to get out of the house, and I went to an old church that had been built in the 1700s. Beautiful old thing. Huge red stones. Oh, it was gorgeous. And my only friend that day was somebody who was 6 feet beneath me. He had a headstone marked 1776. And this total stranger, his or her name was completely washed off the headstone from age. But that was my best friend. And I sat there and I begged and pleaded with them, please send somebody to come find me. And nobody came. So I got up finally and I sat on the steps of the church and I said, please, somebody open the door and let me in and ask me what's wrong. I will tell you. And nobody came. So I got up and I walked to the train station and I was ready to end my life. When I got there, I was a smoker at the time. I had one cigarette. It would be my last. And I knew that when I left the house. And I had my notebook of matches. And a man came out onto the platform after I'd lit my cigarette, and he asked me for a light. So I handed him my book of matches. And I tried to tell him that he could keep them, that I wouldn't need them anymore. And I was thinking to myself at the time, maybe he'll ask me why. And he didn't ask. And he lit a cigarette and he handed his matches back to me. And a little boy came out onto the platform and took this man's hand and looked at me. And it was the first time in months that anybody could see me. This child of 3, 4 years old looked right through me. And it was in that moment I knew that everything that I had been through started when I was that child's age, and I could not take away that child's innocence the way so many people had tried to take mine. So rather than going up the tracks and waiting for the train, I went back to what was my prison. And I said a prayer along the way, thanking God for a miracle not yet received, that if he was going to spare me by allowing this child to show me that he could see me, that there had to be more to my life, and it was time to fight back. That was my absolute most memorable on my knees moment that I ever survived. I went through several more months of abuse before I was able to get out of there. And then there was this one other incident in 2019. So all of that happened in 2011. In 2019, I found out that my former trafficker had made me famous on a pornography website by sharing a bunch of photos and videos of me. He was making a fortune off of me again. He was trafficking me and making money off of me without me even needing to be there. And he was including social media links so people could find me.
Oh,
I was terrified. So I reached out to an organization out here. I told them, I said, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to survive this. I've already survived so much. I don't think I can get through this. And they got me to counseling and therapy immediately. And they got me in touch with an organization that specifically helps survivors of human trafficking to get legal help with whatever they're facing. As long as it's related to their trafficking in some way, they will help. And these guys were going out there and attacking these pornography websites and giving them cease and desist orders and having all of this stuff pulled off one at a time after another, one after another. It was crazy. But every time they pulled one more down, 2 more would go up on other sites. And I realized that no matter what I did, this was going to exist. It was going to be out there and people were going to find me. But if they were going to find me, they were going to figure out why too.
yeah. Oh my gosh. What so intense. And the fact that your spirit still kept going. And when that little boy saw you, it's amazing. These moments where we have in life that are just so profound in their epiphany moments. And I've always believed that animals and children are the purest, and they are literally God's source, spirit's love on this planet. And that's what actually, for me, was the dog thing, was why I do all the dogs. Because when my dog looked at me the way that little boy looked at you, it was the first time I felt unconditionally loved and questioned why I didn't love myself that way. Isn't it amazing that you don't know where it's coming from, and it's just you get those signs? I love the fact that there is that assistance, the legal help part of that. But how do you get out of it, first of all? And when did you, because in your story you say you really didn't realize you were even being trafficked. So tell us, how did you sort of come to terms with the fact that it was trafficking and it wasn't just an abusive relationship?
I did believe that for a very long time. Each different time that I was able to get away from trafficking, the first time I had to put up with what was being done to me because I had been taken out of the state and I had no way back, no identification of any kind, and nowhere to go. I had to wait until I got back to be able to get away from there. And then as soon as I got back, I left. And I moved around and I tried to scramble and do whatever I could. I was homeless. I was staying with people that I barely knew. I moved from one state to another. I married a man that was twice my age that I barely knew. I did everything I could to try and escape that situation, and I kept getting followed by the first person that trafficked me. He followed me for many, many years, trying to find me. The second time I was trafficked, I was basically 19 years old. I had gone to stay with my grandmother, and I was left at the Daytona Beach bus station and told that I was there to fend for myself, and I had $5 to my name. A young couple took me in and told me they would give me a place to stay until I could find my way and get on my feet. But what they really meant was they were going to give me a place to stay until I could find the highest medical. That's what happened. They sold me to somebody that I didn't know. I was locked up in a small room for 28 and a half hours with no water, no food, no bathroom facilities. And the only way I got out of there was because I watched a lot of MacGyver as a kid. I MacGyvered my way out. And I was so proud of that a few years ago, I actually wrote to Richard Dean Anderson to tell him this. He's never responded, but I have to believe that he knows that that man saved my life.
I love that. I love that. I wish he would answer that. Maybe we'll tag him on this episode and say, hey, you need to respond. You never know where help comes from. And I love that you had said, someone, will you ask me a question? Someone, will you just see it in me? Will you just realize what I'm going through? Because we talked about this offline too, where there's this shame element. It's hard for victims, whether it's DV or trafficking, anything that you feel shame with, and rape victims and, people that have been molested, whether it's children or adults. Rape. I think there's this element of shame, and people who don't understand it and haven't been in it don't understand why we don't just shout out to the rooftops, hey, I'm being abused, can you help me? It doesn't work that way. You want someone to just see it and save you. You have these sort of unrealistic ideas of like superheroes coming and just getting you out of it, right?
I coined a phrase shortly after I got out of Scotland. Stop looking for a hero, try being one.
Ooh, beautiful, beautiful. So tell me how you became your hero. I mean, I already can see, here you are in front of me, you're already my hero, but tell us how you finally found that self-worth and you finally realize what I speak on is how to be your own best friend. When did you finally decide you're going to be your own best friend, girl?
When I had none.
Yeah.
You're at your absolute rock bottom, lowest point in your life. You've got nobody, you've got nothing, and you feel like you can't tell anyone what you've been through. To this day, I can walk along through a grocery store and people look at me and think, oh, she's got it all put together. They have no idea. They have no clue. Whenever I do talks and stuff, when I go to conferences, I will go in early and pick out a seat that's like right towards the middle so that all the seats around me fill in so that nobody has any idea who I am. They just know they're going to end up sitting next to a stranger. And I'll go and sit there. And when they call up the survivor of human trafficking onto the stage, when I stand up, these people can feel that. They're like, oh my gosh, I was sitting right next to her and I didn't even know it. Yes. You have no idea who that person is that you're sitting next to, whether it's on a train or a bus or whatever. These people could have had a very charmed and blessed life. And these people could have gone through some of the worst things imaginable. You never know, and you don't know where they are in that space in that day. So be kind.
Yes.
But all that to say, in 2018, I attended an anti-trafficking conference. Somebody that I was very close to at the time told me about it and said, hey, have you heard that this is happening? It's like, no, I'm definitely interested, because to me, it was all windowless vans and kids being kidnapped off the streets, the stranger danger that we were taught when we were kids. This is what they've portrayed it as in movies. Right. So I went to this conference and got very excited about it. And while I was sitting there, I was listening to them describe what human trafficking actually is and who the perpetrators are and what happens and what it actually looks like and how it's nothing like how it's portrayed in Hollywood. And as I was listening, it's like, this sounds really familiar and I don't like this very much. Right. The Department of Homeland Security defines trafficking as the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain labor or sex acts from another person. It mentions nothing of transportation, although the Google definition does. Google is just very wrong on this one. When I was sitting there, I was listening to this, and they're giving examples, and they're talking about how more than 85% of all people who are trafficked by people that they know and trust and love, not total strangers. It's grandparents, it's aunts and uncles, parents, boyfriends and girlfriends. In my case, a man that I've known for 7 years and was engaged to be married to. They're people who have that trust already built and that authority over somebody's life. Those are the traffickers. They're not the strangers that we used to have to look for on the streets. Those might still be molesters or child rapists or kidnappers or murderers or serial killers. You don't know. You still want to be watching out for the stranger dangers. But the majority of the danger doesn't come from outside of the household. It comes from inside. As I was sitting there listening to all of this, and my head was filling up and my heart was just breaking into a million pieces, they opened up the floor to questions. My question was going to be, how long does it take for somebody who's been through something like this to have a normal life? But instead, what happened was they walked up to me, they handed me the microphone, and I sat there and I shook, and finally I got the words out. I'm a survivor. I'd never said it. I'd never realized it before that moment. Everything kind of swirled and changed. And then I got my question out. And everybody always wants to know what the answer to that question was. And the answer is that it looks different for every single person, just like every incident of trauma looks different for every single person. The healing process is going to change depending on how many neurosynapses that we've built to be able to cope with what it is that we've dealt with and what kind of trauma reactions we've developed and if we've been able to fight back against those trauma reactions. Every single case is different. And the best way to be able to fight back to have a better life is to educate ourselves on what it is that we're feeling and thinking and going through and why this is happening to us.
Yeah, I all of that. I love that. And I'm going to go back. You'll see me writing as you speak. There's so much there's so much, you're so full of so much information. I love it. Use of force, fraud, or labor to give me that again.
The use of force, fraud, or coercion.
Or coercion. Okay.
To obtain labor or sex acts from another person.
Okay,
and there are some overlaps in the area of human smuggling and human trafficking. So there's a lot of confusion when it comes to this stuff. But the human smuggling is transporting a person from one place to another. It does not require going across state borders or international borders for human smuggling. You can take a person from their house to somebody else's house, and that would be considered smuggling. If you're taking that person to that place with their permission, that's smuggling. You're sneaking them, right? So when I was a kid and running away from home and my friends were taking me to their house, that was smuggling, not human trafficking. There's a huge difference between the two. And like I said, there's a lot of overlaps. There's a lot of confusion in that.
Definitely. I mean, I have no idea. And I mean, I think I'm pretty well versed on a lot of it. That's amazing. Okay, listeners. So she's giving us a lot of, defining and clarifying things when it comes to the trafficking. And I think the 85% of people trafficked by people they're familiar with, that makes sense to me because, there's so much of that grooming going on when you have people who don't have your best intention, obviously abusive, toxic family members, friends, family friends, aunts, uncles. That makes sense. And because the trust is already there, it's easier. And so I would think these traffickers are going to go to people who have victims that are more trusting, obviously, because it's going to be easier. There's not going to be a fight on their hands. So that really is eye-opening, and it makes a lot of sense. Now, I think what you said about, because of my background, obviously, with psychology and trauma healing, my own healing, the answer, like you said, how long does it take? Well, it's just like life coaching. How fast do you want to work at it? How much how much of the hard stuff are you willing to do? And trauma, as you know, and we're going to get into, you're the best person to be a trauma mentor. I'm sorry, but I think without any experience with trauma, I don't think therapy and counseling and life coaching works if you don't have someone who's been there, done that. I'll say
Oh my
that.
gosh. I traumatized my first therapist so bad.
Oh no, because they never heard or experienced it.
She had no idea. She knew that human trafficking was a thing. She had no idea what it was like to actually go through something like that. And I just wrecked that poor woman's world. They had to get me another therapist.
Oh, I mean, with all due respect to people in the profession, but it would be difficult to go to someone right out of college as a marriage counselor who's never been married. You're going to go to, like myself, who's been divorced twice and married 3 times. I know what not to do. I want to go what not to do, not necessarily what to do. So I think you're fantastic when it comes to that and doing the work. I think, see if you agree with me. I think any trauma healing comes from the ability to A, face the darkness, B, talk about the darkness, and C, release the darkness. What do you think?
Yep, absolutely.
I think it's working through it. But what we find, and I've had so many guests that are trauma healers that have used psychedelics, ayahuasca. There's different ways. There's so many options out there now. Hypnosis, we have hypnotherapy. But what's interesting is I had someone who was a master life coach for 20 plus years and a therapist for 20 plus years and just came to the realization of her own PTSD. And so I think it's the recognition, and podcasts like this, podcasts like yours, speeches like yours, and books like yours are making it more okay for us to identify as, yeah, I had some trauma. I had some childhood trauma, and we can talk about it in our lives up to that point. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I have to agree. I mean, this is basically the whole reason that my life shifted was because I needed to acknowledge that this stuff existed in my life. If I had not come to that realization, if I hadn't had that moment in 2019 on that freezing cold day, if I didn't get attacked that one last time, I wouldn't be who I am now. I was a doormat. People abused me and walked all over me, and I didn't have any kind of ability to stand up for myself for the first 38 years of my life.
Yeah.
But I got attacked that one last time, man. They just pushed all the wrong buttons.
And I think that's the beauty of people who do overcome and do triumph. And 45 years till I discovered it too. It's, you have an identity that you grow up with where for us, there's a lot of that codependence when you have had that abuse or you've had that either mental, psychological, or physical abuse. You believe you deserve what you're getting. And the only way out of that is to do what the abusers are asking you to do. And so that's that's codependence in a nutshell is I will do what you want me to do if it makes you happy so that I can survive, basically, right?
Right. There was a study done of high school kids several years ago, and they were asking these kids, at what point is it okay that a boy forces a girl to have intercourse? And in this study, it started out with some rather innocuous things. He bought her dinner. It was something like 18% of boys and 13% of girls at high school age who said that at that point it was okay that he forced her to have sex. Then you start getting into other things like they've dated a long time, or she has already given herself to somebody else, or she's gotten him very excited. These numbers are
oh wow! No wonder you two were gushing over there. Holy cow!
47% of girls.
Holy cow, you two!
Oh no, he was all smiles when he saw Jordan. No, but look how cute my promo is.
Those numbers and acknowledging that, we have to acknowledge that some of that actually still lives within us too. And when that happens, that's when we have this guilt and this shame. Because of course, if we still believe that this is okay at this point, we still have that belief that
This is it. This and speaking.
That means that this is my fault. That means that if I
This and speaking.
that's when we start.
So
what I say is you shouldn't shoot all over yourself.
much fun with Jordan.
Yeah, shoot all over yourself. It's a terrible thing to do. Trying to go back, trying to use that bargaining stage of trauma recovery and saying, I shouldn't have done this. It was my fault because I could just bargain this away if I had more control over the situation. What happened to us is not our fault. It has never been our fault. What happened to us says so much about the people who put us through it. It says nothing about who we are, except the fact that we are resilient enough to survive.
Thank God you put that
I
up
think
there.
those are the most empowering words ever. It wasn't my fault. Once you feel that way, once you sort of embrace that, and then you can accept that I did nothing wrong, and that gives you the power to say, yeah, I'm not going to let it destroy me. Now I can move forward.
I don't know if it's
I
going to
love
show
that you
up.
said that. I have a 15-year-old grandson that lives with me, and we are big on consent. And I hadn't really thought about that raising my children, who are now 24, 31, and 30.
She loved the whole. I don't know if she knows the family. She was just
and we said that. We'll say, when is it okay for her to say no? And my grandson will say, at any point. And that's
you worry too much about
in
yourself.
high schools.
Look at now that the paint has settled.
Like, let's talk about the right and wrong.
It looks so good on
what is
camera.
Abuse? I think that's the most
makes a huge difference. It was
white,
and I was washed out with my hair. The
clients, and I
now
know
it's
you're going to
just
completely relate to this because my husband is the one that helped me
it's such a happy room now.
with my clients. I hear a lot of them when they talk about their trauma,
I love it all.
they will condition it. And they will say, but he was under a lot of stress. I was
going to read that text. Y'all read this book. Okay, editing podcast. I've got both promos ready to go, and then
my abuser was
good to go.
He was the blackout drunk, which is something pretty rare. It's not the amount that he drank; it was the effect it had on him. And when he would do the blackout, that's when I was close to dying. That was when the choking and the throwing me across the room happened. And I would literally make excuses with the conditioning. Well, I still do this to this day. I was doing a speech and I'd say, he came home drunk and I was really angry and I said so. Well, being verbal when they're drunk is not a good thing. So I probably shouldn't have done that. I mean, I still to this day, it's so ingrained in my 52, almost 53-year-old brain. I did something to cause this. And so we condition a lot. Is that something you find as well with trauma healing, is teaching our clients to not condition anything, that there's no excuses in how to move forward to not do that anymore?
Right, exactly. Part of the acceptance is understanding that no matter what you did or didn't do at the time, what happened to you is still not your fault. I don't care how drunk that man was. You opening your mouth to say something about him being drunk shouldn't have resulted in any kind of violence of any kind. If anything, it should have resulted in his opening his eyes and saying, she's got a point.
That makes me laugh.
Because it never happened, right?
Right. It never would. To this day, it would never happen. But yeah, it's correct. I can laugh about it now, and you as well. The fact that we've healed from this, and I'm with you that, and I've said this before on the podcast that, when you can look back with gratitude for the things that, yes, were painful, but made you who you are in order to move forward and help people, that's when you're okay and you've accepted it and you've healed and you've let it go and you've moved on. And the giving it forward, paying it forward is healing in itself, isn't it? I see it in you. I see how glowing you are and how purposeful this is for you to say, I didn't know it, but now I can help people identify what this is. So tell us about your books that you've written. Tell us what you're doing to advocate. I can't wait to hear about the charity that you're involved with. Tell us about all that fun stuff.
Gosh, there's so much. I have science fiction, I have fiction, I have nonfiction. I have a series of self-help workbooks. I've got all this stuff that I'm doing, right? Probably my favorite to date is the story of my grandmother's life as a wing walker in the 1930s and 40s.
Oh,
it's
fun.
Called The Road We Left Behind, and I painted the book cover myself. I love that book. It brings me so much joy because she deserved so much good to come to her in her life. So I wrote this book as kind of my gift to her to kind of let her have that happiness. She was an incredible woman. It's based on her true story.
There are definitely some genetics coming down the line to you. Strong women make strong women. And even if it skips generations, here you are, that you see some of her in you. I mean, hello, you are a wing walker in your own right?
Absolutely. In fact, I spent some time as a flight attendant and tried to go wing walking last year, but the state of Colorado wouldn't allow it to happen.
Oh, man. God, he deserves to wing walk into you. So, wow, fantastic. Because as a nonfiction writer, I find fiction to be so challenging and amazing. And I have so much respect for my fiction writers. So tell me about your fiction writing.
So that one is based on a true story, but it is fiction because I had to fill in a whole bunch of gaps. But my science fiction, I have a 3-book series, and it's about a group of unlikely survivors trying to escape the apocalypse from Los Angeles within days of the event happening. I always tell people who better to predict the end of the world than somebody who's already lived through it. The main character is kind of based on who, and this is actually how it started. She's based on who I believed I would have been if the rumors and lies about me had been true. So she is a dark and broken person. And she has to learn how to trust other people and to grow through everything that she's been through. Even though these flashbacks are still happening, she's having PTSD, nightmares, and flashbacks while trying to escape an apocalypse. You can imagine that the melee that occurs. She ends up teaming up with a retired war vet with one prosthetic leg. And he is just this brilliant man. They're trying to get out of town, and she's dragging her 2 cats along. You can imagine where the inspiration for those 2 came from.
Yes, I can.
She meets a police officer, and of course, she doesn't trust him, but she learns through her journeys that it's okay to sometimes trust people. And there's all these little life lessons that you can see where they're coming from as a place of very deep trauma. But towards the end of the book, her character starts to shift. I love that the first book is definitely my favorite, but the whole series was so much fun to write. But I hated the character in the first chapter so much that by the second chapter, I tried to kill her and she just didn't die.
There you go. There's a dichotomy going on there. You can't kill her. You can't kill her, at least not her spirit. And here we are. I just love that. And that sounds very therapeutic too. And I think anyone doing anything creative, trying to heal, whether it's anything artistic or writing or journaling, I've always thought that that's such a great outlet. So I want to see your art because my gosh, you're just a woman of many talents. Let me see how beautiful your art is. I'm sure
I may have to send you some. I actually don't keep any up here in my writing office typically.
Oh, note to self. We need to have some artwork in the background. I want to see your beautiful work. So do you do paints, canvas? Is that usually what your art entails, or what's your medium?
It's usually acrylic on canvas. And that actually came about as part of my therapy. So the only other book that I really wanted to bring up was my autobiography.
Okay.
So when I was going through all the therapy and stuff in 2019, in 2020, towards the end of the year, my therapist told me, the second one, I don't think there's much more I can do to help you. You've done incredibly well. What's next for you? And I said, I think I'm going to write my book finally. I think I'm ready. And she says, oh, that's fantastic. I'll check in with you in January, see how it's going. And we'll kind of touch base and take it from there. Sound good? Yeah. So she reached out to me January 4th and she said, well, how's it going? How's the book? And I said, it's done. I wrote 350 pages.
Nice.
In the month of December while working 2 full-time jobs.
Oh my goodness. Custom justice.
So when I got done writing that book, that conversation, January 4th, she said, well, now what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. She said, why don't you try painting? I said, I've never painted before in my life, other than calamine lotion with a paintbrush, because I had extreme outbreak of chronic hives at the time. It's an autoimmune disease. Mm-hmm. So it was directly linked to and related to my past traumas.
Sure.
I was still trying to figure out how to deal with all this. That was the only paintbrush I had, was the one with my calamine lotion.
I love it. Whatever works, right? Whatever. Right. That's how resourceful you are always. Is you've always found a way to be resourceful and to make lemonade out of lemons. And I just think you're absolutely fantastic. So in the last few minutes that we have to go, tell us what you're doing. Are you coaching people? Are you mentoring? Are you speaking? Where can they find you? If any of my listeners want to just reach out and say, hey, we're proud of you, even, where can we find you?
I'm all over the place. I'm on Facebook at facebook.com/Amanda Blackwood Survivor. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter as @DetailedPieces. I am currently getting ready to open up my coaching and my mentorship again through my website, growthfromdarkness.com. And June 24th, I'm going to be speaking at a From Battered to Brave Women's Conference in Carlsbad, California, talking about who I am, where I came from, and how people can climb back from the dark places. And I understand this is pre-recorded, so that will have already happened. But if you want to know more information about these events, you can always check out shamrockway.org to see what else we have coming up. We've got a lot of stuff here in this year, so definitely keep your eyes open.
I love it. And I'm going to have all of that for you listeners in the show notes. So growthfromdarkness.com. Again, she's going to be in Carlsbad, which I love Carlsbad. Oh, one of my favorite places. And shamrockway.org. I love that. And of course, all your books are available on Amazon.
They're all available on Barnes and Noble.
Okay. No Amazon?
A little bit on Amazon, but I had some confusion with them, and they're having a really hard time for whatever reason getting their paperbacks in. So you can get the ebooks there. Paperbacks are going to be a little bit more of a challenge.
Okay. So Barnes and Noble will make sure that we put those links in. So I just am just so glad that we met. I'm so happy that you crossed my path, because I just really, there's always this kindred spirit when you are women and you've made it out of the darkness and you love yourself and you know your self-worth. And finally, we have the confidence to be the souls that we are here to be, and to follow our purpose, and to be the helpers that we are, the light workers that we are, and we try to spread the light. So I'm just so grateful for you. And I always say thank you for the hour of your life that you volunteer to gift me, because time is more important than any money ever is. So I'm so grateful. And we always end since we always have such heavy topics on ink, I like to end it on a high note. And everything's different with you. This is like, it's so funny. You're like my shifty girl, because new paint color, but also I'm going to start a new segment. So I was doing Take My Money, and we were doing weird and wacky things for sale, but I'm starting a new segment, and it's called What Can You Do For Me? And this segment is, and I'm going to give you time to think, is weird services offered by people around the world. And I didn't know this was even a thing, and I've just discovered this is a thing. I think it's because brilliant minds try to continuously think outside the box, and entrepreneurs are as weird as they come, and we have to always find a way to monetize. So I'm going to give you 2 examples of what I saw before we got on our thing. while you're thinking of things you've seen. Either you've seen it offered or you've taken advantage of, like, maybe there's an ear massage guy, I mean, like that kind of example. I found there is a service that you can have a professional bridesmaid. You can call them up and say, hey, I don't have anyone that really I want as a bridesmaid. And she will arrange your bachelorette party, and she'll deal with your wedding planner and, do all the things that bridesmaids do. She's just not your close personal BFF, which, I don't know, that kind of sometimes is not a bad thing when you take out the personal element of it. Not that I don't drama. I love you, all my girlfriends. I'm just saying, but seriously, when it comes to like organizing things, sometimes not having the personal in with the business thing. So there's that. There's two more that I really like, and this one is really cool, and I would love to do it because my HOA won't allow me to have critters. So this one is a goat rental, and I can rent a goat to come in and do some lawn care for me. So I think that's a pretty cool service. I don't, listeners, if anyone has utilized that, please let me know, because I'm fascinated. First of all, I would just like sit there and pet him all day. I probably wouldn't let him do anything. And the very last one is an alibi supply. And this is when you need an excuse for something. They will find a way to contact someone and give them an excuse or come up with an alibi for you. They're very creative. And unfortunately, it's mainly used by cheaters. And so I do not condone that. But I think it's kind of silly that there's actually a service for someone to provide you with a lie. So there's that. So, Amanda, on that note, what you got for me?
Well, right off the bat, I can think of a service that I actually had to use several years ago. It's a revenge service.
Oh, do tell.
This, because I've never talked about this.
See, I love it. I love it.
So I don't want to give away the website or any of their contact information, because I also don't condone revenge. But you remember when I was talking about the science fiction series, the lies that were spread about me, that it, all that stuff.
Yeah.
The person who spread those lies was at the time somebody that I thought was my best friend. She was like a sister to me. We did everything together. I raised a bunch of money to help her get her car fixed, all kinds of stuff. And when she did this to me, I was still in a very broken place. I felt like I needed revenge. I needed to get a little of my own back, so to speak. And oh my gosh, did they do a trick. So this website will take whatever it is that you send them in text and read it out into a cassette tape and send the cassette tape anonymously from overseas to whoever it is that you want it to go to. And it can take a month or two for this to happen. So by then, whatever it is that's currently going on has probably already subsided, and it is out of the blue. And I didn't do any kind of death threats or anything like that. And they do have a disclaimer that says that they won't do those kinds of messages. But the message that I did leave was, oh my gosh, I don't even remember all the details of it, but I do remember that it was enough that it scared the crap out of her, and she never spoke to me again, because it was something about she's been messing with that other girl, that redhead.
Oh my gosh. This is a judgment-free zone, and I feel like whatever we need to heal, we need to do. That cracks me up. But yeah, there's a service for everything. And if that's what you need, then you just go right ahead. So with that, listeners, I bet you didn't know that. At least in that last 5 minutes, you got lots of information on services that are offered. You can have a professional bridesmaid, a goat to do some yard work, an alibi if you need an excuse, and also you can get revenge on someone anonymously. So that's the world we live in, and I love it, and I'm so happy for variety. So that'll wrap us up for this week. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Listeners, I love you so much. And I'm always grateful for you being here and building this community and sharing everything about our guests and building their visibility and talking about them and sharing everything about them, because they're here being vulnerable, telling their story. And I think that takes a lot of bravery and a lot of courage. And I respect and admire that and appreciate them for that. And I know you do too. So thank you for being here. Don't forget to leave those 5-star reviews. We're doing fantastic. We are globally in the top 1% for the podcast. And I'm just still in awe of that. So little housekeeping, you know where to find me: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Target, Outskirts Press for my books. Still working on book 3. Hopefully it'll be out by the time this is posted. And my dog is more enlightened than I am. My dog is my relationship coach, both available in all of those places. And I'm really proud of our online dog boutique, which is doing fantastic. Right now, my dog is everything.net, all healthy treats for your puppies, organic, and paw balm, soap, shampoos, fun accessories. We're having a lot of fun doing markets around Austin here. So thank you all again for being here. You know where to find me for life coaching, relationship coaching, dating coaching, self-esteem, self-image, all the fun coaching things that engulf your entire life, including business coaching, at coachmaureen.com. Until next week, I love you all. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and most of all, please take care of those furry babies. Until next week, we shall see ya. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the I Never Knew podcast. If you found today's episode inspiring and educational, please be sure to follow, subscribe, and spread the word. The more people that join the Inc. community, the more it can develop and influence others as we work together for a healthier and brighter future. Until next time.